Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another movie review. Today I'm reviewing a film I've been meaning to watch for a while. Over the summer I watched it, just didn't get around to reviewing it, and I watched it for the second time last night. And it's one that I really do enjoy and want to get in my collection one of these days. It is the 1990 American horror anthology film directed by John Harrison, Tales from the Darkside, the movie. The film has a 6.1 on IMDb, and disappointingly has a 44% on Rotten Tomatoes with the audience and a 35% with the critics. I have to say that is just way too low of a score for a film like this, but that's just me. Not to say this is one time where I'm happy that the IMDb score is actually pretty high, because that's more in tune with what this film deserves. The film contains 3 stories and a wraparound. One of the stories is based off a story by Arthur Conan Doyle. That'd be lot number 249. Another one is based on the short story by Stephen King, which that one, the screenplay part, is written by his buddy George Romero. And the last one is Lover's Vow, which is based on an old Japanese legend of the yuki-onna, which is a spirit in Japanese folklore that has something to do with snow. There's a couple different versions of it that I've looked up, but it usually involves a woman in the snow. Now, strangely enough, the origins of this film go back to the film Creepshow, because apparently following the success of both Creepshow films, Laurel Entertainment, which is the production company behind it, toyed with the idea of making a Creepshow television show. But it took a while for negotiations to be complete, partially due to rights and all that. The decision was made to change the name of the television show to Tales from the Darkside. And of course, after the series was a success, they decided to make a movie based on the show. And funny enough, one of the segments in this movie, The Cat from Hell, was originally made for Creepshow 2, but they couldn't do it because of budget reasons. And that's the reason why a lot of fans, from what I read, and of course Tom Savini himself, consider this to be the official Creepshow 3. And watching the film, I could see why. It does really feel like a spiritual successor to at least the first Creepshow film, because as of right now I haven't watched Creepshow 2. And I haven't watched the official Creepshow 3, but from what I hear, it does not really capture the same spirit and have the same movie magic as the first one. Now, the plot of the film is a wraparound involves a boy named Timmy who was captured and chained up by a woman named Betty who appears to be a modern-day witch. Now, Betty in it is played by Deborah Harry, who you might know as the singer from Blondie. Well, she is about to kill him, and in order to stall, he pulls a Scheherazade and decides to read her stories from a book she gave him called Tales from the Darkside, and he reads her 3. First is Lot 249, which involves a graduate student named Bellingham, played by Steve Buscemi, who has been cheated by a few classmates, Susan, played by Julianne Moore, and Lee, played by Robert Seedwick, if I pronounced that name correctly. They framed him for a theft, and they basically ruined his chances for winning a scholarship. As revenge, he reanimates a mummy and uses it to kill him, which I like this spin on the whole revenge mummy rising from the dead thing, and the makeup effects for the mummy are actually pretty good. And of course, in the end, he didn't get found out, but I'm not going to spoil the ending of it, but it really does fit, and it's a nice, dark humor moment at the end. And funny enough, this was Julianne Moore's first film. Next, we get The Cat from Hell, which out of all 3 of the main stories in the film, this is the one that comes the closest to feeling like it does belong in a Creepshow film, or was made originally for a Creepshow film. Partially because it was based on a Stephen King story, and partially because it's written by George A. Romero, so 2 for 1. It is about a wealthy, wheelchair-bound old man contacting a hitman, played by David Johansen, for a bizarre job. He wants him to kill a black cat, who the old man believes has murdered everyone else who lived with him, his sister, her best friend, and the butler. And of course the guy takes the job and he tries to kill the cat, but then he sees it's not as easy as he thought it was going to be. And of course the reason for why the cat wants to kill the old man is, it's a little out there, but considering how weird some of the stories that King writes are, and I mean weird in a good way. It makes sense, especially coming from the point of view of an old man. It basically is that the old man made all of his money from a pharmaceutical company, and they tested the big product on cats. So the cat is basically there to seek revenge for the deaths of all the cats that he experimented on. Which, if you really love animals, this is a nice little bit of poetic justice. And then we get Lover's Vow, which, after watching it twice, I said this is probably one of my favorite of. Then we get Lover's Vow, which, after watching it a second time, I have to say this is definitely my favorite of the three segments. And like I said, it's the one based on the Yuki-onna story. It's about an artist named Preston, played by James Remar. He's a struggling artist. He hasn't sold anything in months. He goes to a bar one night to talk with his agent, and his agent dumps him, and he gets rolling drunk. He leaves the night with the bartender, and the bartender is killed by a gargoyle. The gargoyle looks like it's going to kill him, but then makes a deal with him. If he does not tell anyone about what he saw, she will let him go, and he promises. And later that night, he meets a woman named Carola, played by Ray Don Chan, and they fall in love and eventually have children. And of course, 10 years pass, and his promise is weighing heavily on him, and he eventually tells Carola about what he saw, and this is where the dark twist of the ending comes in, which makes this ending very, very sad. So it's a tragic romantic story, and I'm not going to spoil it, but if you know anything about the Yuki-onna story, you probably already know what the twist is going to be. And I do like the little tweak to it. Instead of a spirit, it's a gargoyle. And of course, the wraparound story does have a happy ending with the witch getting killed, which of course, since it kind of is based a little bit on Hansel and Gretel, you can kind of guess how the witch meets it. You can kind of guess how the witch bites it, since it's based on Hansel and Gretel. And of course, the movie ends with Timmy breaking the fourth wall. Don't you like happy endings? Now, since I've already said the Lovers one is my favorite one, how would I rank the other ones? It's hard to tell, because Lot 249 and Cat from Hell are both placed at the right points in the movie. Like, Lot is a good opening one, but it definitely is a lot more complete story than, let's say, the one that opened the original Creepshow, because that one probably would have felt weak placed like in the middle or anywhere other than the beginning, whereas Lot, you could have placed it in the middle and opened with Cat from Hell. But it's hard for me to decide which between Lot and Cat I like more, because they both have their own merits. They both have a little bit of dark humor. Their acting fits for what the type of story is. I'm probably going to have to go with Lot, but mainly because of Steve Buscemi. I mean, not to say Cat is bad, it's just, it's kind of hard to beat something with dark humor that has Steve Buscemi and a mummy in it, but that's just my personal preference. The directing for the film is pretty good. Harrison knows how to shoot a movie. A lot of the camera angles are good. Like in Cat from Hell, there's some good use of the camera for the point of view shots for the cat, and they added like a little filter to it to let you know, okay, this is feline eyes, and how the camera moves when the actor reacting around it is amazing. The music, it's done by different people. Like Harrison did it for Lover's Vow, Chaz Jankel did it from Cat from Hell, and Jim Manzi did it for Lot 249. And each score fits each tone of the film. It's just, I can't really think of anything that stands out, other than the main theme of the entire movie. But that one, probably have to watch it again to get it to stick in my head. The writing, it fits each individual part. I mean, Lot 249, like I said, has some dark humor near the end. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Night of the Creeps. Just a little bit, and then the rest is a nice little tweak on the whole killer mummy mythos. Cat from Hell, like I said, most Creepshow out of all three of them. It has the King Romero vibe to it. Lover's Vow, like I said, just great tweak on the Yuki-onna story and tragic. And then, of course, the epilogue. Wraparound is, modern Hansel and Gretel, best way to put it. Acting, all around, each one fits their own individual story. Deborah Harry, I don't think she was ever trained as an actress, but for what she has to do, she doesn't do too bad. Probably more experienced actress could have made the witch come to life a little bit more, but she's fine for it. Matthew Lawrence, who played Timmy, he did a good job for what little he has to do. Lot 249, Steve Buscemi, always good to see. Since this was released in 1990, this I think is one of his earlier roles before he made it big. I don't even know what movie he made it big with. I think maybe Pulp Fiction or one of the ones a little bit after this. Julianne Moore, it's nice to see one of her early roles. Christian Slater's also in this one as her brother, and it's nice to see him in there too. He does a decent job for what he has to do. Probably not my favorite role of his though. William Hickey plays the old man in Cat from Hell, and he does fine for what he has to do. David Johansen does good as the hitman. He does go a little over the top at points when he's angry, but it fits the type of character he is, especially when he's getting all frustrated because of the cat. Dolores Sutton and Alice Drummond as the old man's sister and her best friend. They ham it up a little bit, but it fits the tone of the flashback, so I can't really complain. But I can understand if other people don't like him. Mark Margolis, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, who played the butler. This is mostly a physical performance. He barely has any dialogue, but that's fine when he has to do. James Remar and Ray Don Chon, I like them as the lovers in Lover's Vow. They do have a little bit of a chemistry. It's more so in the latter half of the story, because it's supposed to be 10 years later. It slowly builds in the first half of the story. You could buy them as people who just meet and slowly start, I say slowly, quickly, if that makes any sense, fall in love. If you've watched the segment, you know what I mean. And Remar does a pretty good job as the struggling artist who he really does have a vision. It's just hard to make money on a vision that no one else understands. And Ray Don Chong, for what her character arc is, she does a good job with it. And she really does sell it near the end. I haven't seen a lot of her work. This is probably my favorite performance of hers that I've seen thus far. The practical effects and makeup effects are pretty good. I mean, the mummy effect looks pretty good, especially since it's supposed to be a mummy that's unwrapped. When it's moving, it doesn't look as desiccated as it should, but it's not that's more of like a nitpick. The gargoyle special effects are good. If there's anything that would be nitpicky, it's just the lip movements don't really match 100% sometimes, but I think they work. I do like, at one point, some of the gargoyle effects kind of reminded me of the special effects in Cronenberg's Fly remake. Those of you who've actually seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, because I'm not going to put context to it, because that would be a spoiler for the plot of that segment, and I don't want to spoil it. Some of the cat effects in the Cat from Hell look a little hokey, mostly when the cat is supposed to be doing something that they obviously had to use a fake one for, like choking someone and all that. But it works. Oh yeah, and another thing, I do like that story does reference Cat's Eye, another anthology film based on King stuff. It's a very brief one, but I guess that right there shows it. That was originally written for an older film, but it's a nice little wink wink. I only realized it because I watched Cat's Eye in this film, in such close proximity. Now, if I have to give Tales from the Darkside a rating, I would give it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's a very entertaining film. The segments really do flow well into one another, and they stand out. There's none that really feels like, oh yeah, that's just there to be a beginning one.